Okay. Okay, so let's start from like the very beginning. So the first chapter that we addressed and we looked at, if you were here, if you weren't here, we try to always review it. We say that before a soul comes down to this world, they kind of like take an oath. They take like a little promise that they're going to be a tzaddik and not a rasha, right? So our neshama takes an oath. It says, I'm coming down to this world. I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to be a good girl. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to be a bad person. And then actually it says something very interesting, which we'll try to connect back to today, because like we'll get to like chapter 12, 13, 14, where he talks about this idea where that even if you think that you're a tzaddik, no, you should think you're a rasha. You know that like Pirkei Avos of like, al tamen atzmacha ad yom moscha, like don't believe in yourself until the day you die. So kind of like, it's like be a tzaddik, be a good person, and don't be a bad guy. And then even if you think you're good, you're probably not that good anyway, which is interesting. It's like a little bit of like muster, and it's a little bit like, where's this heading? And we'll try to do, and if I don't get to it at the end, just remind me. I want to get to like explain a little bit what that means. Okay, so we have tzaddik, rasha, and then we said most of us are not tzaddik or rashayim. Most of us are, this concept, what we should strive for is to be a Benoni, right? Okay, so now we have like terminology, we have like an index. We have tzaddik, rasha, Benoni. And a Benoni is a person who has what? Perfect outside, but inside has turmoil, right? Outside they present like a tzaddik. Outside they look like a very good person, but inside, we'll explain a little more today, they have like inner turmoil, inner struggle. Then we said that, okay, fine, so we have these concepts. When you come down to this world, you come down to this world as what? What's the first neshama that Hashem gives you? He sends you down to this world. Nefesh habahamis, an animal soul that not necessarily is evil, because we like took away that word, we took that word out of the vocabulary, but it's actually what that neshama is like all about itself, all about ego, self-fulfilling prophecies, just give me things that I need to be able to survive. Then we said that you also came down to this world with a nefesh elokis, right? Which is what? A godly soul, and that comes to us a little bit later in life, and that is what if the nefesh habahamis only wants to be here and survive in this world, what does the neshama elokis want? What does the godly soul want? He just wants to go back to the next world. And then we explained that through this pressure of like an animal soul and a godly soul, what ends up happening is one of them is going to have control over the other. Who is in control? And we explained that the nefesh elokis has to be in the driver's seat. It has to control the animal soul, and not only control it, like tap into it, to utilize it, to use its animal soul strength to bring it to where he wants to be, to his side, which is Hashem's side, okay, which is a heavenly place. So then we explained that your neshama, we're like, okay, we're souls. What are souls? How are we made? How do we come down into this world? What does our soul come down to this world? Like a soul is not a real thing. We don't see it. We can't feel it. It's not like a phone case. It's not tangible. It comes down with... Right, it's like Hashem unravels himself, like Hishtalshalos, and he unravels himself, and it's made with the same spheros that Hashem has, but in our language, in our terminology, it's referred to as kochos, powers, right? Soul powers. So how does your soul interact in this world? It has the same capacities that Hashem has, but here in this world. What are those capacities? The ability to have chachma, bina, da'as, right? All these things that our animal soul is just like, our animal soul is already here, but this godly soul that comes into us is a part of Hashem. We'll explain that also an animal soul also has the same spheres, but same kochos. So this soul, how does it interact in this world? It has three. What are they? What faculties are these? This part is your intellect, and the rest of your body is your... So it has 3 intellect, 7 emotional, and in order for the godly soul to know that it's in check, it goes from intellect to emotion. How do you know if the animal soul is ruling the house, is taking over your body? When the emotions control the intellect. Okay, so we said that it has to flow from here to here in order for it to be like from the godly soul. But when your emotions take over and take control, then they go to the intellect, and then they say, okay, so we want to eat something that we're not supposed to eat. Okay, figure out how we're going to do it, and don't make me feel bad about it, and don't let me have guilt, and I just want to do the things that I want to do because I'm in charge, right? Like Nechama, my daughter, it's like her birthday last week, Thursday. Every single day of this month is her birthday, and she just like wants to be in charge. So she's like, she figured out, by the way, how to order from Target, like on my phone. Because she sees me all the time. Like, do you ever have this? Do any of your kids order on Amazon, like stuff? Yeah. I think like my nephews ordered like a bouncy house, like through Alexa once. Like I've even like saw it on her thing, and she's like, they ordered like a $300 bouncy house. She literally was on my phone. One time she like Uber Eats, almost did the whole thing. But it's like her birthday, right? So she's in control. So she's making orders. And she has birthday stuff coming to the house. I'm like, your birthday was last week, Thursday. But in her mind, she doesn't have that godly soul yet. And it's all about me and me and me and my birthday and my birthday. Like, why are birthday? There are people who never outgrow their birthdays. But like little kids, like for them, their birthday is the most exciting thing ever, right? And it's like all day, everything. Give it to me, I want, right? So that's the animal soul ruling the house. That's not mommy making orders. She's 6. It's a very exciting time.
What's
Like
the age that
you kind of shift out of that. Yeah. I don't know. Some kids don't ever. And all my kids have summer birthdays, so it's like they're all in camp. Like, you didn't do anything for me. I'm like, you're in camp. Like that should be enough for you. You know? That's very hard.
You're with your friends.
You're with your friends, right? I know. I'm like, I'll send a birthday cake up. They're like, Mom, that's not a birthday. You know? What age? I don't know.
You're saying like from going from the bottom.
So I would say like bar bat mitzvah really is the age that the godly soul comes in. So that's probably when there should be like a switch and be like, oh, my birthday's all about Hashem. Really, birthday's all about mommies. Like, I'm like, what are you celebrating? I'm like, me. Like, it shouldn't be. Exactly. You don't have to do anything. Okay, so we have the composition of the godly soul, which is 7 emotional, 3 intellectual. The intellectual rules over the emotional. And then not only did Hashem give you powers, Hashem also gave you clothing. He gave you garments, things that levushim, things that you can use your powers with. He's like, here, I gave you powers. But how am I going to use my powers? You're going to use it through your, what are your clothing? Through the mitzvos, yes, which are your thoughts, your speech, and your actions. So Hashem says, I'm giving you powers. You have soul powers. How are you going to use them? You're going to use them through your garments, through your mitzvos, through thought, speech, and action. So that's one way. And another way, Hashem says, it's not enough just to have clothing. I'm also going to give you levushim and clothing and food. Right? Food? It's fine. I'm also using this as like, I'm cheating over here. It's like, it's over here. I'm like, wait, next. Okay, so Hashem gave you garments and clothing, levushim, and food. And we said, which one is essentially like little bit, like stays with you a little bit longer? Your food. Why? Because clothing, when you wear clothing and you take it off, you're not wearing that clothing anymore, right? Like, that's the whole concept, by the way, of a uniform. Like, why do they make people wear uniforms, right? Like, you work in a restaurant, you have to wear a uniform, right? You're a nurse, like, oh, you have to wear a uniform. Do you have to still wear, like, scrubs and stuff? Or, like, I feel like they loosened up. Like, it used to be like a nurse had like a hat and a coat and this and that. So it's just scrubs, right? So why? Because you know when you're wearing that, you're that. You take it off. You know those people who never take their scrubs off? Like all my brothers, they walk around, their scrubs. We're like, we get it. We know you're doctors. Like, you know, they come to a bris in the scrubs. I'm like, you don't have to. Maybe one of you did that. I don't know. You did?
I went straight to work.
Right. But it's like when you're wearing it, like you're a nurse, right? When you're wearing it, you're a doctor. When you're wearing this, right? The second you take it off, you're a different person. But food, you ate it, it stays with you. You ingest it. Torah is with you, it stays with you. And that's what I was saying. Like, I'm starting to like finally like integrate this in my life, because like as I'm learning this, I'm like, this becomes part of you. Like, that's it. You can't unthink it. You can't unsee things anymore. Like, I see klipos now. Like, I see them. Like, you end up ingesting it and it becomes part of you, and it changes the way that you think. So Hashem says, I give you soul powers. With those powers, I gave you clothing, and I also gave you food. Okay. And then we moved on to saying the animal soul. The animal soul has the same stuff. You would think that the animal soul is a little bit more refined. I mean, the godly soul is a little bit more refined. The animal soul can go like, you know, roll in the mud. It's not necessarily that. The animal soul has the same soul powers, the same clothing, the same thing, but all it does is it takes everything and it uses it for itself. It's like, even, let's say like we're learning this class and you're like, oh, I feel so good. I like fed that part of my body that needs the Torah, and now I'll go to the gym, and now I'll go to Gourmet Glatt. Even saying that, like I did it for my self-actualization, for me to feel good, that's even your animal soul. Because that's your ego. That's you saying, I need it. What you could say is, I'm learning this Torah l'shem shamayim. Like, I'm literally learning this. And you are, by the way, because there's no tests and there's no homework, and nobody, and if you show up, you show up, and if you don't, you don't. And that's the biggest sign of like, it's l'shem shamayim. Because obviously there's no carrot at the end. I'm not telling you like, oh, like I teach in Olami. So it's like, you come to 10 classes, you get a free trip to Israel. No, here you're literally learning Lishma. This is not an animal soul thing. This is a Nefesh Elokis. And by the way, we explain as we get a little bit further, when we start to talk about the tzaddik, you can have moments, tzaddik-like moments, that you're like, oh, I tasted it, it felt good, and then you could come back to a Benoni. But that idea of thinking that you're feeding, that your animal soul is Like that idea of like thinking like, oh, I'm going to learn Torah because I need to fill that need is your animal soul talking. Is that clear? Yeah? Does that make sense? Because like sometimes we think like, oh, this is very good for me right now, but really it's
basically doing things for the wrong reasons.
right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Doing things for the wrong reasons and not even necessarily, but we'll explain that it's not such a bad thing to do that. But when it does, it happens to be your animal soul.
You're still doing a good thing.
You're still doing a good thing, right? We talk shalom, shema, bala, shema eventually.
So it's more like if you're doing it for intellectually,
Right.
as opposed to integrating it, as opposed to
Right. Like people, I wanna, like I love this knowledge.
Right,
Like this
right.
knowledge is
like
amazing.
you
Right.
will learn the same amount about I don't know, chemistry or whatever, and it's also thought provoking.
Right. Happens to be like my daughter had a teacher in Tag, Mrs. Filkey. You know who she is?
Yeah.
She like, she taught biology.
She was my teacher.
She was your teacher. She taught biology, and like she made it all about Hashem.
Yeah.
It was like I was like, I need to meet this teacher. She was the cutest lady. She retired. We actually went to go look at her house. She like lived around the corner. And we were like, I'm like, oh my God, Mrs. Filkey, I love you. She was like, she's like, yeah, your daughter's amazing. I'm like,
Hashem is infinite wisdom.
That's what
she used to always say.
Every day, like 5 times a day.
right. So she like taught biology in a way that it was like not just like intellectually stimulating. Oh, I'm gonna pass the regent. She taught it like really like l'shem shemayim, like really because her neshama lokas. So like that's really amazing. Okay, so then we have everything that's in the animal soul is also in the godly soul. We have both of them, but the problem is, and then we explain this with that metaphor of the city of a small city that had 2 kings, right? This was maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, where there was a city that had 2 kings that wanted to rule it. Okay, one of them was obviously a mashal. I mean, there was a mashal for the nefesh Elokis and nefesh Bahamas, but one of them there was only one car, and they both have the keys to the car. Who's going to get to the car first? Who's going to drive away with that car? Who's going to be in control? And these 2 kings are constantly at each other because in order for one to live, it had to kill the other, right? In order for the animal soul to be in its full glory, there cannot be any nefesh Elokis. And in order for the nefesh Elokis to be in its full glory, there cannot be any nefesh Bahamas. So they're constantly fighting, and who's going to be in control of the city, okay? That was chapter 9. Then we moved on last week to chapter 10, and we explained that we went like back a little bit from Beinonim, and we went to talk about the 2 extremes, which are the tzaddik and the rasha. We said there are 2 types of tzaddikim. Tzaddik v'tovo and tzaddik v'ralo. Tzaddik that is complete tzaddik gomer, like totally perfected. And then we explained the tzaddik v'ralo, where he's like minimized his Yetzer Hara, but he's like literally like brought it down to like its lowest level. What's the difference between a tzaddik v'ralo and tzaddik v'tovo? What's the difference between an amazing tzaddik, like a perfect tzaddik, and a tzaddik that has like a little ra in him? Anybody remember? They flip their nefesh habahamis to a nefesh Elokis. So what happens is they're so perfect, they're so perfect, and very, 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 very few people have done this, that they have a nefesh Elokis and they have a nefesh Bahamas, right? So if you want to say Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, because that's something that we're used to, fine. But I don't like using those words. But it's like one was able to get to the point where to take all of his animal instincts and all of the ego and all of his Yetzer Hara and all the Sitra Achra and crush it to a point where he actually didn't just crush it to make it null and void. He flipped it, and now he has a second Yetzer Tov. So he's like that person who's like shining and glowing and has 2 Yetzer Tovs. He walks around with 2 Yetzer Tovs, which means that anything that he thinks about and wants is aligned with Hashem's thoughts and wills and everything. So it's like every single thing that the tzaddik wants to do is exactly what Hashem wants to do. How do we differ from that? Before we get into the chapters of Beinoni, how do we differ from that?
Because it's not always what Hashem wants.
Right.
We're altruistic.
Right. Sometimes we do things for our own, right? And sometimes we don't think that every single thing is exactly what Hashem wants. You know, like when the principal walks into the room, right? Or like a very scary teacher, everybody all of a sudden is on their best behavior. Everybody's sitting up and everyone's doing exactly what the principal would be so proud to do. Also, that's they're like taking pictures and videos, and like you want to be like, you know, like all that kid. I remember like we used to have like teachers, like now I'm thinking about it, like they were probably like, what would they do, like proctor the classroom? Like, do you remember that? Like, I don't know, we used to have these like young seminary girls come in like to learn to be a teacher. And we were all like smiling and our best behavior, right? That's what it's like to be. It's not like everything that I'm doing is because that person wants to do it and that's what I want to do and I want to be the best version of myself. But that's a very, very extreme version. But we explained last week that you can have tzaddik-like moments. You could have moments where you're totally doing something for the right reason, and it's just like a little glimpse into what your life can be if you were a tzaddik. And you could hold on to those moments. I go back to those moments. If you ever had like a crazy moment of clarity or like a crazy davening and you want to like go back to that place where you were, like you can get there because you achieved that level of tzaddik. It's not something that we strive to achieve, but if you chance upon it, then like tap into that, like use that. I still have to find out about this if you're allowed to listen to music when you're davening. I feel like we have this conversation. I never know if it's like,
Right before.
I know,
Why
I should do it right before. I like to listen to music while I'm davening, but like literally in an earpod.
Like singing in the English while people are diving, like to invoke the.
Right, so my question, I have to find out. Like then I'm like, me? Suki does can I listen to music? Like meditative music.
Oh.
Yeah, we're actually doing a whole like Thank You Hashem album with, and this literally is like my favorite kind of music. It is somewhat house music. With Chaim Guri, I don't know if you know him. He's like a Waterbury guy. He called himself Seekers. So we're doing like a TYH collab, like a whole album with him, and it's like literally, I'm like, I need this album to come out because it's like a davening track. It's like a meditative track. Right. I have to find out, like halachically, like if you could. But you're right, the Levium, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
You said we don't strive for that level.
Why do we strive for that?
Okay, so we don't.
Can't?
Okay, so that's a good question. Why we don't strive for it? So what I would say is that it's a level that not necessarily was the purpose of coming down to this world, because a tzaddik doesn't have struggles. A tzaddik got to the point where nothing is like, I don't even have to like think like, oh, maybe this is from Hashem. Or maybe Hashem wants me to control my anger here. Or maybe Hashem wants me to control, because he doesn't have any of those issues. So it's not necessarily a level that we come down here for. If you get there and you do it, then you're like Lamal and Nateva. You're not really here. There's like those.
There's only a very few in each generation. And it's also, they don't live within this world. And we're not meant to not live within this world.
I was watching a video like on Yom Kippur at a Tishma for, I was just reviewing Tanya, like chapter 1, and this Lubavitch Rebbe was giving the share, and he was saying that tzaddikim, he said they're unrelatable, they can't relate to you. And like it's a whole different thing. He's like, you shouldn't try to, like, you can't try to be like them.
Right.
Because they don't get your struggles and they never will. So it's like, they're just like a whole different entity.
Right.
Are we talking about like the Gedolim? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like some
That's
maybe
why
don't
some
like
people
that.
don't
But
like
by the
the
way,
song.
saying that, you know, there's a concept that like, we for sure have a song for it. Like like in a place where a Baal Tshuva is standing, a tzaddik gomer has they have no idea what their struggles are. Like they really, really have no idea. So it's like, so people go to them with their struggles. So so there's definitely this element where they came down to this world and they were able to squash it and flip it. But then you also have to remember, that's tzaddik gomer. Then there's tzaddik Aralo, which is an incredible, incredible person that literally just not put it to sleep, because put it to sleep is the Benoni, but somebody who was able to eliminate it, right? To conquer it, to like koveshis yitzro, right? Like he's control it completely, but it's still there. The tzaddik gomer flipped it. It's gone.
Right.
The second one, it's there, but it's laying dormant, and I don't want to get to it like too much because I want to talk about the Benoni. Then on the other side, we spoke about the Russia. And the Russia, there's two types of Russias. There's Russia Viralo, like the most horrible, horrible person that's so bad that he has zero regret for the things that he does, that what ends up happening to his nefesh elokis,
He just like it starts just.
it like even leaves him. It like comes out like an aura, like it escapes him. It's like, I can't be here. It's so bad. If you've ever had that experience where like you have to like walk away from something, you're like, it doesn't feel right or whatever, you like disassociate almost. So that's like a person who does real bad stuff and has no regret, so bad that its nefesh elokis can't stand in its body. And then there's Russia V'tovlo, where there's a bad person, but he makes mistakes. Now, when he makes mistakes, it could even be little mistakes. It could be like we said last week, like going through red lights, or accidentally killing somebody, right? But it only happened once, but it still happened once. So that's a person who is not necessarily like so evil. He does something wrong, and what's like the kicker over there between the Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah? The Rosh Hashanah feels bad. He has regret. He's like, I made a mistake. I should not have done that. No, like, and by the way, you could probably walk out thinking maybe I'm also a Rosh Hashanah, because like I've done things and I've done it like some semi-intentionally, and I'm like, oh, I feel so bad, right? Like, but a real feel bad. But if you have a real tshuva moment, you could come back. Doesn't mean like it doesn't mean like you're excommunicated like the Rosh Hashanah. It means you do wrong things and you have regret and you feel bad about it and you're trying to shift to be a Beinoni. So now the next like 5 chapters are all about the Beinoni. One thing I realized I forgot to review was the concept of klipa, which now you're saying it's in your terminology, I can't take it away. What's the concept of klipa? Klipa was back in like chapter 5, we spoke about like garments, the clothing, and the food. And then we said, if the whole point is to find godliness in everything, why is it hard to find godliness in everything? If you're telling me that there's Hashem, there's a spark of Hashem in every single thing out here in this world, why can't I get to it? And what's the answer? Klipas, right? What are klipas? Barriers, husks, coverings, clothing, right? Layers that need to be removed to find Hashem. So the greater the light, the greater the R, the more husks and more klipas. And like, if you think about it, something that's very, very precious is covered in a lot of layers, right? Like, unlike me, who like leaves my jewelry like flying all around the house and just hoping it pops up. Most people will take off their jewelry and put it into a jewelry box and close it and put it in another box, right? And protect it, right? There's layers there that have to be uncovered. So sometimes Hashem sends down the greatest light covered in the greatest klipas, because once you peel it off, then it's there. So then you have it. So we explain the concept of klipas, and then we also explain that there's no such thing as ra, there's no such thing as bad. What's the other side called? Not the Yetzer Hara. What was another word? Started with an S? Sitra Achra, which is the other side. So we're not saying that anything is really, really, really bad. Everything else on the other side is Sitra Achra. And what's Sitra Achra? Anything that's filling my needs and not Hashem's needs. Anything that is just here to keep me to survive is the Sitra Achra. The things that I care about myself and that I'm feeding my own ego is Sitra Achra. And everything else with finding Hashem in it, then that's all good. That's all godliness. Okay. Whoa. Okay, so are we good? Yes.
About your question about like, so why people go to the Dolim. If I'm actually reading Chaim State right now, and like, if you actually read their Sfarim, people don't go to the Dolim for companionship. Like, you go to a friend, like, question, oh, I didn't daven today. They're not going to the Dolim, like, I didn't daven, let's have a companionship about the fact that you also didn't daven. They're going to that to say, like, have an issue, give me a bracha. Like, most of the time, what's the better response? A bracha, because they cannot relate. It's like, bua, 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 or like, I help you, right? Because they're not sitting with you and be like, yeah, I also really struggle with davening.
Right.
You know, they're not doing that. I mean, like, whatever, like, maybe rarely they have like 1 or 2 students that they really share with, but like,
most of the time,
on a
right.
level, like, it's they don't know what to say, and therefore it's a lot of just like bracha and aflacha, and people go to Gedolim because they think that Gedolim have magical powers that could solve their issues, and that they could like, Hashem could like answer them and not, you know, us, which is our own level of unworthiness, like we don't feel worthy, and that's why we think Gedolim have more power than us.
Right.
But just to answer, like, no one looks at them for companionship.
Right, right.
They're going for a bracha, for advice, for halacha, for maybe shaila. But you go to your friend and then down to earth level, like, okay, I'm struggling with davening, can you like talk this down?
Right.
That's my.
That is very
Level
interesting.
Rav. Meaning, like, your rabbi is not gadol level.
Right.
See, they're big tzaddikim, but they're not like a gadol adar who's, as we said, like has no struggles whatsoever. So I feel like those are the ones that could probably help you and guide you through.
You definitely always have to first of all, like, even I was like learning Tanya, like I hear it all the time, like you need to have like a mentor. You need to have someone that you can look up to in order to do that. The gadol obviously is somebody else that's a tzaddik, right? Like, how many people have the name tzaddik next to them, right? Like Noach was a tzaddik, Yosef was a tzaddik, Mordechai was a tzaddik, right? Who do we refer to as tzaddik? There were 4 people who never did any sin and went straight to Olam Haba, right? Like Binyamin was like, there's very, very few of those people out here, but most of the times that we go, I do like that answer. That's really, really nice, is to be able to help for them to bring down something. And that's in general with the tzaddik and with the Rebbe. They're a conduit to be able to bring us bracha. Like that's why we go daven by them. That's why we ask for brachas for them, because they're like the heart of the generation. So everything pumps through them. So if I'm, let's say, the arm, I want my bracha to go through the heart, because the heart really like sends everything out. So that's really what a tzaddik and what a Rebbe is seen as. He's that heart of us. And where
Also, they don't choose it. Like I was just reading so perfect.
They don't choose it. No, they come down here in this world, right?
Like I didn't choose to be the guy on the door. Like he's like it just like happened. People just came to me, and then just we assume like it's
Right.
Like, and then
No, but then they have to like take ownership. But obviously,
Yeah,
there's levels of the neshama, right?
struggle,
Right.
you know?
There's also levels within tzaddikim. Like within tzaddikim, there are. Okay, but that is very interesting. Okay, so we did like a major review, and now let's learn a little bit about the Beinoni. Okay, so the Beinoni, what do we know about the Beinoni? We know that the Beinoni is something that we're striving for. We know that this book is called the book for in-betweeners. This is about the Beinoni. This is about us. So Russia's, Hitler's, Napoleon's there. Reb Chaim, all the tzaddikim, Hashem, Rabbi Nachman, all tzaddikim over there, right? Now we're talking about us, and not regular people, because we're not regular people. We have a neshama locus and we have a neshama bahamas, so we wanna do it. So what is the Beinoni's goal? Here's the thing. Whenever the Beinoni has to make a decision, okay, when they're faced with something, they have already within them, based on their animal soul and their godly soul, they have instincts to be able to control their emotions. And I think, by the way, this is like the first tool of Tanya, because Tanya, we explained, like gives us a lot of like advice and tools, and just like almost like literally, like you can imagine like a toolbox, right? Like you come down to this world, we always have this like image in our head. You come down to this world with a knapsack, and you have your, all the things that you need for this world, your peckle, and you chose your peckle, and now you come down. But if you chose your peckle, like you chose the things that are going to happen to you, then you obviously have the tools to deal with the things that are going to happen to you. Whatever it is, whether it's like, marriage issues, financial issues, health issues, it's all in there. You have the tools for it. So let's now try to open up our bag and find the tools. So here's the first tool when it comes to a Beinoni, and that is that a Beinoni has the ability to control their emotions. Really, you heard this before, right? When did we hear this? What class? We were talking about this, that we have an ability to affect our emotions. Anybody remember this? When we were talking about like the 3 intellect, the 7 emotional, when you put your intellect first, you have the ability to, right? Do you ever have that natural instinct, like your doors are closed, nobody's here, you will scream at your children? You're like, in warming on, you're like, no, put that guilty down, right? Like, that's not kosher. Like, Mom, we're in gourmet glass, everything's kosher. Like, or like you have the ability to be able to control yourself when you want to lose it in front of other people. But like when you're at home, you have the ability to flip and be like, the second you walk into the door, you just be like, why did you do that to me, right? Or like, I'll pick up my daughter from school and I'm like so angry at her because I know that she's not sick. And I'm like standing in front of Tag, like in my car, and I'm like, hey, come in the car. The second she closes the door, she's like, she braces herself because she knows I'm going to be like, you don't have an ear infection, you're totally fine. Why'd you make me pick you up from school? But I'm like smiling to her friends and the principal in the school, and I'm waving. Like, what is that ability to like flip? What is that? That's a tool that we have. It's like the coolest thing if you think about it. And by the way, like everybody, really almost everybody has it. We all have that ability to be able to switch off and turn on and switch off and turn on, right? Anybody can like imagine a scenario?
People don't have that, though.
Some people don't.
will yell at them.
Right. And what is that? When they don't have, what are they lacking when they yell at other people?
Like social.
Social skills, impulse control, right? They turn out to be very, very embarrassing. Little kids don't have as much impulse control as adults, right? Impulse control is such a for me, like such a triggering word because like I hear it all day. Like I work in the school system. They're like, there's no impulse control. No, I'm like, hey, because he's 4. Like let him, okay, if he's 8 and if he's 9 and if he's 10 and if it's a problem, that's fine. But there's a reason that this is like a buzzword. Remember we spoke about like focus. We explained that like da'as, like fuses chachma and bina. And that's also something that like we're missing. We're missing that ability to focus. We're also missing impulse control. There's something about it. We're like, no. The world at large, I think now is lacking impulse control. Do whatever you want, whatever feel right. Like it's hard. Like I teach in the city, and I'm like I'm in Manhattan a lot. And I'm like, this place, I don't know what happened here. Like I don't know what happens. Like it's like city. It's like just not what it used to be. It was like in its glory. Like I don't know if it was a COVID thing or whatever, but like what is that thing that people are missing? People are totally missing impulse control. It used to be like Times Square. Okay, there's a couple of homeless people. Now it's like there's just this like loss of like connecting your godly soul to your animal soul and like who controls who. So it's like you see the world a little bit, whatever. I don't want to be that person who's like, the world is unraveling, because I think it's coming from, it's a good thing is happening, but we're missing that impulse control. So the first tool is that what we're learning about a Benoni is that a Benoni has perfect outsides, almost like the tzaddik. The Benoni can look like a tzaddik on the outside, but inside, what's happening inside? Struggle, like tons and tons and tons of struggle. If he can't control that struggle, he turns into a Rasha. If he could control it, he turns into a Benoni. That's the fine line. The second a Benoni has the looks of a tzaddik on the outside, but the insides of a Rasha, and it's just who is going to control it. So this is literally the idea, is that you have the ability to affect your emotions. You can control yourself in the store. Why can't you control yourself at home? Oh, I probably could. Probably could. And then you start to say these things to yourself and you're like, this is crazy, Faigy. Like, I'm waking up from so many things. Like, I thought I couldn't control myself from like rolling my eyes. But like, guess what? I could. Because if I knew there was a camera staring right at me, I would control my eyes, right? Like I would not make that comment. I would not. And then it's scary, but also like, it's like a good feeling. It's like, okay, Faigy, you could do this. And the more you do it, the more practice you have, the better you get at it. And when you are a perfected Benoni, you literally, what you do is you take your Yetzer Hara, you take the Sitra Achra, you take your animal soul, and you put him to sleep. You gave him a melatonin, and he's out for the night, or 3 or 4. Actually, last night I was like, I took one. I'm like, should I take 2? I was like, no, I'm gonna control. He's fine. Sometimes, but like it's like you do what you need to do, but you put the Yetzer Hara to sleep almost when you're a Benoni. Actually, there's a story. I heard it, and I don't remember like who it was, which Rebbe, but like a young boy asked his grandfather, like if he, I forgot, you for sure know who the story was about, I forgot who it was. Like a young boy asked his grandfather, like, I heard that you're like a Benoni, like word is going around that you're a Benoni, like how do you do that? So he's like, oh, you also want to be a Benoni? He's like, wait, take a sitter, a second, whatever, and say some Tehillim. So he said some Tehillim, and as he was saying Tehillim, he's like, only focus on the Tehillim. Okay, fine, perfect. You said a few prakim of Tehillim? Okay, great. After, he gave it back to his grandfather, and his grandfather said, okay, in those few prakim, you were a Benoni. He's like, that's so easy. He's like, okay, now just do that for the rest of your life. Like, only think about the thing that you're doing is God's will, and that's exactly what Hashem wants to do from you, and in that moment, you are Benoni. So forget like striving to get to tzaddik moments. Let's get to Benoni moments, because that's what we're here for. We want to be in-betweeners. We have struggles. We're not here to be a tzaddik. So what do? Every time I'm kovesh yitzro, every time I control my insides and it looks good on the outside, that's a Benoni moment. Now, what makes it easier for the Benoni, by the way, other than the Rasha, is that we might have two sides pulling us, one saying do this and one saying do this, but a Benoni has Hashem. Has Hashem on our side, right? Like the Benoni has Hashem. I don't know, it was like a line that my sister-in-law had in a play. I think she had one line the whole play, and that was like her line, or no?
She had a really bad list.
Oh, right. So she said, right. It's so crazy. And that line sticks in my head. And I'm like, when I heard it about the Benoni, I'm like, we have Hashem on our side. That's what makes it easy for the Benoni. Because the Benoni is like, it's like when you're choosing people on the team, you're like, I always think this is so mean. I know the girls, I don't know if the girls do it so much, but boys do. Boys do. Line up. I get you. I get you. I get you. I get you. Right? So the Benoni is standing there. Boys do. Boys do it. Boys do it. Yeah. Yeah. I remember, like in Machanayim, the captain gets to pick the kids. I'm like, why does the captain in Machanayim get to pick the kids on our team? Like, I remember that. But like, literally, the Benoni is like, okay, I pick Hashem. So the Benoni always has Hashem on the side, so you don't really have to worry. In a way, it's like, I'm so nervous about my struggles. Like, okay, you wake up in the morning, and you're like, I want to be the best Benoni ever, right? I wake up in the morning, and I want to be able to control my instincts, but like, I'm so nervous because last night I went to sleep in a really bad mood. You know when you go to sleep in a bad mood just for no reason, right? So you're like, okay, is today going to be a bad day? No, today doesn't have to be a bad day. The Benoni wakes up in the morning and says, it's fine. Hashem is on my side. I have these struggles for a reason. These struggles are not bad. Remember, we like disassociated from the word Ra, like in like part 3. Like we were just like, there's no such thing as bad. Bad is not bad, is there just to get me working. Did we explain the mashal of like the king and his son. There's a very good mashal. I think it was in like chapter 9. I think it's in chapter 9. Maybe I missed it last week because we were doing a lot. There's a mashal, and I'm pretty sure it's from like Shlomo HaMelech, but like the Baal Tanya references it here, that a king who had a son, who wanted his son to be the best version of himself, and he wanted him to be eventually the next king, and he was trying to like build his character, like he wanted to, whatever, so he sent him to like lacrosse and like, I don't know, intellectual, and learn Spanish and learn all these other languages, and he wanted him to literally be the best version of himself and to control all his inner desires. So what did he do? He hired a prostitute to try to tempt him, to like seduce him, to see if he was able to be Koveshes Yitzro, right? Like Yosef HaTzadik, he had Ishes Potiphar. They say that Ishes Potiphar had like good thoughts when she was doing it, even though we were like, oh my God, she's like the worst person in the whole Torah, right? What she was doing it like Lishma almost, because to test Yosef to the limits, to see how strong he was, and to be presented with a picture of his father and realize who he was. And that experience, by the way, like made Yosef. Like as much as like sometimes we skip over that chapter and we're like, you just Potiphar, like what happened there? No, that made Yosef who Yosef was. We learn like Moshe Weinberger has a whole series on Yosef HaTzadik. Like he literally gives a series on Yosef HaTzadik, and he explains this midah of Yesod, of being able to control yourself, and it made Yosef. So once again, you're going to tell me Ishes Potiphar was like, she was like the worst Rasha, like she was like a horrible person? No, she was hired by Hashem to go do what she needed to do. That's in essence what the king did here. The king hired a prostitute. Now the prostitute has the ability to say, okay, I know this is so bad, I'm not going to do my job. But she's a citizen of the king. The king hired her, the king paid her. She has to do what the king says. So she does try to seduce the son. And you can think that she's the worst person ever, but she's doing her job of what she had to do. That's the neshama, that's the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh habahamis is like, listen, you could squash me to whatever you want, but my job is to work as hard as possible. Hashem pays me the big bucks for this reason. He wants me to get you to trip up or to mess up or to make a mistake or to really ultimately control yourself. So the Benoni can wake up every single morning and have that moment in his head and think, 1 second, whatever is going to come my way is going to be, it's going to be hard, right? Like, kids are coming home, washing machine is broken, this, what happened, whatever. These are all my struggles. My babysitter left, cleaning lady left, whatever. These are all my things. And I'm like, I could be so confused by it, but I'm like, where's this coming from? This is Sitra Achra. Like, stop it. Like, stop thinking that somebody's attacking me. And also, by the way, Hashem sent me the bad, but he's on my side. He's on my team. I'm like, he's color captain. Like, he's going to help me get through all these struggles. So every time the Benoni uses his intellect to control his emotions, he sharpens that tool. He makes it even sharper. He makes it even stronger. And that's a practice that we need to do.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Does this apply to non-Jews also? Meaning, do they also have the Nefesh Bahamas and
Nefesh Elokis? So they have a Nefesh Bahamas, and they also have something, I think we touched upon it maybe in the first class or the second class, they have something called a Nefesh Hasichlis, which is like their knowledgeable, intuitive seichal soul that helps them make decisions. And it's like probably like like morality. Like think Shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach.
Right.
Like what are those mitzvahs b'nei Noach? Why b'nei Noach need mitzvahs? Why can't they just do whatever they want? They can't. They can't just do whatever they want. And by the way, those Shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach are very like moral standards of society. Like have judges, like have a judicial system. Don't just have chaos all day, right? Don't rip off Aver Menachai. Like, don't rip off an animal. Like, no, like, do it properly. You don't have to have the standards of Glock kosher, but like, you can't just rip off a leg of an animal, right? Like, things like that. I always like, don't kill, don't steal, right? Don't, like, I forgot, like, I should have memorized them in school. At one point, like, some Yedias Koyos test, like, had it on it. But so it's morality, so that's their Nefesh Hasichlis. But the Nefesh Elokis is special to a Jewish person. Okay, so when you harness Hashem, and when you have control, and you're able to use all your Nefesh Elokis, your Nefesh Bahamas, all for the right reasons, and you churn it out, that's like a tzaddik-like moment. But that's a Benoni. You don't make it disappear, it's still over there. Okay, so that tool, by the way, is called, terminology, I need a Tara Faigy, she was making last week, she was like writing down like vocabulary words. So another vocabulary word is moach shalit, like to rule al halev. Okay, your moach, which is your brain, is shalit, is ruling, right? Like a moshel, like to rule, right? This is where like your shorashim kick in, like, oh, I remember that shorash, right? What? Like to rule over.
I know
Oh.
the word. I'm saying, how do you say it?
How do you say it in Hebrew? So it's like al halev. What?
Sholet. Yeah.
Sholet. Yeah. Are you Israeli?
My parents.
Oh, I love when that like comes up. You know, like Bracha Jackie, like all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're Israeli. I like that. Like when they all of a sudden pronounce certain words. So al halev. That means that your intellect is ruling over your heart. Okay, so tool number one, like now you have tools. Like you know that your impulse control is a way of you connecting to Hashem. You say, I'm going to control those thoughts, those speech, those feelings, and I'm going to use it to get to Hashem. Because remember, like you do have these, you're like Rivka. You have those two, like Esav and Yaakov inside of you. You have those feelings all at once. Just remember, Esav was hired by Hashem to do his job to get you to, not to like trip up, but to get you to strengthen yourself. It's like when you have weights, right? You're working with weights. You master the 10, the 20, the 30, the 40. All of a sudden, you're lifting 100 pounds. Why? Because your Yetzer Hara gets stronger. Don't think for 1 second that melatonin like was enough for him for one night. He's coming back. You could, by the way, be a Benoni for like 10 years and then you can make a mistake. You could. You could be controlling and controlling and controlling, and then all of a sudden, why? Why does he still come? Because the more he sleeps, the bigger he gets. You think like, oh, you're putting him to sleep. It's not going to bother me. Sometimes I do this with my kids. Like if I'm mistaken to start bedtime a little too early. Do you ever have that? And you're like, and then it's like, then they're up till 10. Like you have to do it the exact time, right? If you put it to sleep a little too early, then you're like, oh, sometimes I'll give them melatonin at 6 and they're out at 6:15 and they're up at 3 in the morning, right? It's like a science. You have to figure out your nefesh hamas. You have to be like, I'm going to put you to sleep. Don't wake up. And even when it's waking up, you know, put on a sound machine, like give it whatever it needs, put it to sleep, give it a drink before it goes to sleep because it could sleep for a very long time. But remember, he's very well paid actor. Like he gets paid from Hashem. He's gonna wake up and he's gonna do his job.
That's where self-care comes in. Like you have to take care of your mind and body. Like 100%. Not necessarily only through Yiddishkeit. You have to eat healthy. You have to exercise. You have to
because you have to feed your nefesh hamas,
exactly.
Right? Otherwise, he's gonna be ravenous.
If you just ignore it and say, "Oh, it's fine. I'm very spiritual," and you just ignore all that part, then you're putting it to sleep, but it's gonna rear its head.
Wow, that's amazing. I never realized that. Yeah, no, it happens to me. I never like quote like the Mishpacha magazine, but like it happens to be. I was reading and there was an article. Does anybody read the Family First?
I did.
Did you read the self-care one? I happen to have loved it. It was so smart. I have to give it to you. I'll send you the YouTube link. It's true because like sometimes we're like, let me just be a shmata because I'm like serving Hashem. No, Hashem's like, I don't need to be a shmata. I gave you an animal soul. And by the way, I think maybe this goes back to the tzaddik concept where tzaddikim don't need as much. Why? Because they don't have an animal soul. They totally flipped it. So of course, like the Chafetz Chaim like needed one, right? That's like the ultimate story. He had one suitcase and he slept on the floor because he didn't have a taiva to like be in a yummy, comfortable bed with like, you know, whatever the best linen, Egyptian cotton linen, because he didn't have the nefesh halokah. He didn't have a nefesh hamas. So, but we do. But like what Mary's saying is so important because it's like if you don't feed it, then he's going to be so hangry, right? Like.
But when you label like Gashmias or like Navazanas as evil,
Right.
it ends up causing Yesh and like it ends
You
up
give up.
becoming a downward spiral. And really, like Hashem created this. This is the struggle. You're supposed to be like you have to elevate both and integrate.
Right.
Ignore one. And I think that's really
What really brings it together.
Yeah, I'm so confused. So you're saying like, let's say you go to the gym. Before we were saying that if you do things like that, you have to have the right intentions. So you're saying, meaning elevate everything, right?
So do moach shalit al halev. Do intellect rules over your emotion. I am now exercising so that I'll be a better mommy and I'll have more strength.
Right. Not that I'm gonna be so skinny, everyone's gonna look at me and think I'm so pretty.
Everyone will be happier. Go Virgin. I'm gonna quote Paloma Geffen. She was like, there was like a shul event, whatever, and she texted me. She's like, and I was like, wait, where were you? And she's like, send me videos of it. She's like, I went for a run. She's like, Ellie's like, go for a run. You need a run, right?
It's not bad. That's good. I feel like I have a style like. Do you know much about Becky Academy? Like
No.
She's this amazing child psychologist.
Oh, really?
Book. That's like my parenting Bible, and the whole premise is called Good Inside, and like it changes your.
Wait, I bought that book.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
amazing.
I'm now reading it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's yellow.
I
Yeah.
have to please you.
Yeah. And it really begins like you are good inside. Like you're
Right.
good. The
Well,
premise is
that's
you're good.
your shama.
Yeah, and that's like when my kids come from that premise, and that
Yeah.
like and Hashem sees us the same way. Like I gave you this nefesh this. Like it's not bad. It's
Right.
not. It's integration.
It's the integration. I
We're not
know.
told that when we're younger. Gosh, it's not bad.
I know. Gashmius is like such a bad word. It's Gashmius, right? It's coming from. I honestly think that the previous generation was like almost old tzaddikim. I don't know.
They were in survival mode.
What?
They were in survival
They were in
mode.
survival
I think
mode.
we don't talk about this enough. I think like a lot of it is like pedestal. We don't.
Yeah.
Like,
No, they were in survival
Do
mode.
you know, like I spent like this guy in Rochelle and it takes so long to do. Take this off.
Oh, I don't think they could hear.
Do you ever find like I have like the best belly laugh? Like he's like, does no one talk about that?
Right, I
It's so
know.
normal.
Right, normalizing it. We were talking about like normalizing it because they're not.
He's hysterical.
Right.
Like, he was funny. He was cute. Like
Right.
I know it's okay to say. Like
Right.
I don't
What do you
know.
mean? It's okay. Like
I
I met with Rav Yossi, my brother, because we went to go talk to him a little bit about my father and like some medical things, and we like sat down with him, and I was like also like I'm like very intimidated. I'm like sitting there like okay, like crossing my legs, like putting on my like PTA skirt, you know that skirt, you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? So I come in, and then like it was like after perm, whatever, there was like a perm chair, and like Rav Yossi like sat down and like he put his feet to the side. He's like, this is a little comical, and I'm like. Okay, you're relatable. Like, okay, you've been through this. Like, you've dealt with Kibbut of Aim. You know what it's like. You know, and it's okay. Like, I can relate to you. So it's like breaking down those barriers. It's like, obviously, he is a tzaddik. I'm not saying that, but Rav Yossi Zakatinsky,
Who's that?
the Rav of our shul in Vakshe. Yeah. So
like we were saying, like this is the first generation where we're actually like talking about
able
we're
to.
not in survival mode.
We're not in survival
We're
mode.
not, like, this is
But I
really-
also think that, like, we say this a lot about the previous generation. They were kadoshim. Like, they were mamish kadoshim. Like, the Holocaust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was Kedoshim, and then, but even before that, they were always in peril.
They were always in peril.
They were always
They were
in
always
peril.
in
We were
Cossacks,
never able-
crusades.
We were
like,
never able to live in peace. This is the first generation that were able to live in peace.
right. They were
So that's
always
why we're
like.
able to do all this
To-
work.
to-
That's why we're able to tap into it.
Right.
It's
So
healing.
in
It's
previous
all
generations, we
healing.
only tapped in to one
So-
neshama or the other, or
No.
no?
It wasn't that we didn't do
It wasn't on the
this.
table.
This was automatic because they had to do that in order to stay
In order to-
Jewish, in
right.
order to survive.
Right.
They had to tap into it. They had to, but
They
they
couldn't
weren't
get into
they
on
weren't
this
sitting
level.
around
Right,
talking about
right.
it like this. They weren't
Right.
intellectualizing it.
And by the way, I think
integrating
about
it.
that all the time. Like the time that Hasidus came to this world was, let's say, revolutionary, right? The time that Hasidus, like with the light of the Baal Shem Tov in like 1700s, that was when the wars were fought, when the battles were done. I mean, there was still obviously World War I and World War II and things like that, but the fact that we were able to stand on our 2 feet, like a Renaissance era, an Enlightenment, there was enough ground to stand on that you were not going to be a slave, whatever. Obviously, we still, like, there was the Baal Shem Tov came like right after Xer's Tachat, so like there were hundreds of thousands of Jewish people being killed, and it's like, okay, now we're falling apart. What do we do? So the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, right? Hashem sent the medicine at the exact time that we need. Which, by the way, chronologically, if you think about the years, that every day is 1,000 years, like the 6 days of creation. The Baal Shem Tov came down to the world Erev Shabbos. He came down because Mashiach is going to be Shabbos. So what was like right before? It was Friday morning. The Baal Shem Tov came into the world. The Arizal came into the world. The Arizal was 1600s. Like, and that came with like Sir Isaac Newton and like, oh my gosh, the world is not flat. And oh my gosh, we don't have to be slaves for the rest of our life. And there's purpose and meaning in things. And like man search for meaning. And then like all that stuff started developing. People started thinking. So that's really when it came.
And your guy played Sharp on Friday night. We were standing on top of them. And it's 5 hours with Esther me. And it was such a
Oh
moment.
my
And
gosh.
She pointed to me, Rowan, like, she's like, that's where
it came from.
She's like, that is where the answers to this generation's struggles. So it's like, I always felt so kind of like, oh my God, I was like, I chose. Like,
Ni'imos
that
v'men
is
chanetzach.
where, like, it was born. And I'm like, she's like, that's our start. Like, our generation is different. Our struggle is different.
Very, very different.
Our answers are different. Like,
Right.
this is really.
But then we should be so grateful,
Right.
right? What were you gonna say?
No, when I went to Remington Weimar from Kelly gave a Tisha B'Av share, and she does this. Were you? I don't know what you were saying. Like, we shouldn't feel guilty about like the world we live in. Like
Right.
Hashem chose us to survive.
Right.
Like,
We're the generation that needs
we are-
this, right?
We are like able to walk into the world of God and have everything around us, and it's just
Right.
so easy and so nice and
Right.
luxuries and everything. Like like we're supposed to appreciate it, and like Hashem wants this for us.
Right.
Like,
It's
don't
such
feel
a
guilty about it.
right. It's such a crazy concept that we think that like those gashmiest things are part of the Ra
But
side.
the question is like
To what extent? Right. I know. But, like we were asking
We're
about.
like we were
We're supposed to buy the rights.
but we have to make a decision. We have to make a decision to flip it.
To flip
No,
it.
like, to what
This is
extent?
not how
So
we're
yes,
gonna
vacations and this and that,
continue.
taking
Right.
care of yourself and clothing and looking good and all that. It's all really important because it's part of self-care.
But
and
I
whatever,
think
like,
that
to what extent?
right,
Like,
right. So it's funny. So to quote the Mishpacha article, it said that self-care is where you've created enough goodness for. This is like kind of like the barometer. You've created enough goodness in your life that you don't have to escape your life.
Yeah, when I'm giving from a full cup, I can give.
Right. 100%. I mean, like, I don't say, like, yes, I've been working remotely for a year and a half. It changed my life. Why? Because I realized the kalim that I now can tap into much more. So it's like self-care is enough till you realize you don't have to escape. We always want to escape.
Right.
Like, and it's like, take care of yourself to the point where you don't feel the need to
It's just
escape.
hard to,
It's
like,
hard, right.
that-
Also, I think as it grows,
also
like,
you could want to go on vacation every 2 weeks.
right.
Like what are escaping on? If you want to go on vacation every 2 weeks, then you have to.
It's
Then
something
you have
else.
to,
You
right.
have to,
And as
like,
you
What
said,
do I need?
what am I escaping
what-
from? So I think that the barometer is to realize like you've done enough and you're also still able to bring it back to Hashem. Yes, and you know what? Don't fool yourself into it, but it's true. Like you said, you walk into Ramadan, you have everything, right? So I pick up a slab of meat, it's $80. Look, have it, Shabbos, Kodesh. Go home, stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about it. Like I made the decision to infuse godliness into this meat. I don't know how, but it is, and it's free, right? Calories are also free on Shabbos, which doesn't work.
But bringing
That
Hashem
answer.
into it, I have to go, but I want
Yeah.
to say, bringing Hashem into
Wait, it's
it
ready,
is, it sounds like it's like a tool, it's so simple, but like, it's really a very lofty level. But to make it practical, it's bringing it into when we have a struggle, but also when we're doing a mitzvah, when you're davening. Like actually saying, I'm davening, think about Hashem. I just listened
Right.
to share on Nesiva Das, Nesiva Shalom, from Avi Fishoff, and he basically, the last one was, bring Hashem into your mitzvahs. Think about Hashem when you're davening. Some people write in their siddur, like, think
Right.
about Hashem. Like, so that we're actually able to make those connections to,
Right.
to get to these levels.
Right.
It is a lofty level.
It
To
is.
think
It's
about
so we're
Hashem.
making it like it's so
I'm
easy.
thinking like only on one physical things to like bring Hashem into it, but like
No, but even
No,
on your
right.
even
mitzvah.
your
more so.
mitzvahs, right? Even more so, and that's why, by the way, like Hasidim, like
Yeah.
what do? They make like hachanas. Like
Right.
whenever like the men are running late, like we're making hachanas. I'm like,
Right.
you're running late. Like you're not dressed yet. Like you're not. What is hachanas? Like hachanas is to prepare. You prepare. Like Hasidim, they go to shul an hour before to prepare and sing and get themselves in the mood because they're activating that. They're activating it. And especially in Chabad, they started off with the mimer. Like the Rebbe would speak for hours before to be able to harness that, to be able to control it. So the tool from the Benoni that we learn here is that you are be able to have your moach sholet al halev. You can have your intellect make those decisions. Also remember you have Hashem on your side, so you don't have to worry. And also remember that all the struggles are there, that's what they're there for. That is what they're there for. They're there for to be to wedge in. And by the way, like if you think about it, like he gave this example, don't worry if you have to go. This was a very good example that Chase Taub gave, which by the way was so exactly me. It was like literally a conversation I was having with my sister-in-law. She was talking about this, like she was talking about this wrap from Mom's Pastries. Like, oh my gosh, the best one. They take broccoli burger. It's not on the menu, right? Nothing in Mom's Pastries is on the menu. Like, if you are a real Mom's Pastry person, like, you have the menu down. It's certain types. So she's like, just ask for it. They'll make it for you, whatever. It's a broccoli burger, tomato, of two other Caesar dressing on the side, right? So the first thing I said was, okay, I don't like tomato, I'm gonna take out the tomato, right? Okay, fine. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna order it. Fine. I was in the middle of doing some self-care. I was getting a manicure, but I was infusing it with Torah because I was listening to Tanya. And then he says, I put on the class. The first thing is like, okay, so take something that you don't like. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, and then someone in the background's like, tomato. I'm like, oh my God, he's talking to me. I'm like, hey, wait, I need to hear this mashal. And he said, let's say, okay, you don't like tomatoes. Like that's like a behavioral thing that I don't like tomatoes. I can't eat salad that has tomatoes in it. Maybe cherry tomatoes because then like the inside, it's like a sensory thing. I don't eat avocado either. Anyway, but if someone told me, I'll give you $1 million, Faigy, if you eat a kazayas of tomato every single day for a year, I'm gonna eat that tomato, right? Like no matter what. It's not gonna come 364 days. I'm gonna be like, no tomatoes, Faigy. This is so nauseating. You can't eat it. No, because I have one more day. So that's such an it's like such a good muscle for being like, you can control it. Like, yes, tomatoes key. Tomatoes not an avera. If it's an avera, it's one thing. If it's asr, Hashem says you don't have to go there. But if it's just something that you don't like, you can control it. You could control it. And that's the biggest example. If I paid you enough money, I would eat tomatoes. I would eat that broccoli burger with a tomato in it. So you have that tool in your toolkit. Utilize it. Think of like controlling yourself in Gourmet Glatt versus not controlling yourself at home, right? Like we have the ability, and every time you do that, you strengthen your Benoni, and you strengthen it, and you put him to sleep, and you give him another melatonin, and then you continue working, and then he wakes up the next morning, he's like, I got you, and you're like, nope, I have more control. Go back to sleep, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. But remember that he has a very high paying job, and he's gonna get you at any moment. So the second you're like, I got it, he's gonna come back even stronger. Okay, so I'll end this here. And now, if you wanted to say anything else that was not, so.